Welcome back for Phase 2 of Guide to the MCU. I will be covering 6 more movies. These will be Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Captain America Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Age of Ultron, and Ant-Man. So, sit back and enjoy Phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Dance off, bro! I have the high ground!
39 days, 20 people, 1 survive!
On the Tribe of Nerds. Where else would we go next but right back to the man that started it all? With Iron Man 3 picking up right after we left Tony at the end of Avengers, I think there's some interesting stuff that gets explored in Iron Man 3. The PTSD element from the events of the Battle of New York is kind of interesting. It's something that makes sense for Tony Stark to be going through. I think his dynamic with Harley Keener, the kid, is a really fun dynamic as he annoys Tony the whole time, but they have a really good dynamic together. I like Rhodey in this as well. I think Tony and Rhodey actually have a really good friend dynamic.
Nailed it. Yeah, you really killed the glass. I was aiming for the bulb. You can't hit a bulb at this distance.
And I forgot to talk about this in the Phase 1 podcast, but of course everybody knows Don Cheadle replaced Terrence Howard after the first Iron Man from Iron Man 2 onwards. I think Don Cheadle, we've just gotten to spend more time with him. So I like his portrayal better, but I didn't hate Terrence Howard. But I just think there's scenes here that are just really fun to show their friendship together, especially in this one. And I mean, the action scenes, there's some very good action scenes in this movie. Shane Black directed this, of course, taking over from Jon Favreau. I think, there's definitely the mixed reception because of the Mandarin twist, and actually, Rebecca Hall's character, Maya Hansen, was originally supposed to be the villain, but we should mention, originally Kevin Feige and Marvel had to listen to this creative committee for about the first half of the MCU, and Kevin Feige had a higher up named Ike Perlmutter, who was not a good person. He had previously said statements such as about the recasting of Rhodey that nobody would notice because he claimed, like Perlmutter claimed, that black people looked the same, and then he had claimed that nobody was gonna buy toys of female characters because female action figures didn't sell, according to him. And so he basically, that him and that committee basically forced Shane Black, Kevin Feige, everybody to basically change to Aldrich Killian and do this fake Mandarin twist to kind of compensate. And I know the Mandarin twist itself, the Mandarin in the comics is kind of a racist caricature. And so they didn't want to necessarily go that route. At this point, we've obviously seen with Shang-Chi that they can make the Mandarin a lot better, and they can do better, and fix that. Like I like a lot of like the character growth that Tony Stark goes through in this movie. Obviously, the ending, the action scene, with Tony and all the Iron Man suits is great. The Aldrich Killian as a villain was obviously not a good villain. And just like, kind of a rip off of Syndrome from The Incredibles is basically what he was. And yeah, just not a great villain again. But there was some really good stuff in here. I've been kind of mixed on Iron Man 3 in the past, but I still think it's a fun movie. There's some cool stuff exploring Tony's character in here. I'm not the biggest fan of how Pepper gets Extremis and then kind of does all the weird stuff and then they just undo it. At the very end of the movie, they're somehow able to fix that. Um, but I've gone up on this movie. So I'm actually gonna give it a B.
That feels weird, but I'll allow it.
Um, I I previously given it like top of C, but like there's some really good stuff in here. Just quite a few flaws as well. But then there's the post credit scene is really Avengers had like the first gag post credit scene with shawarma. This one is Tony is explaining the story of Iron Man 3 at the beginning of the movie, and then at the end in the post credit we find out he's been talking to Bruce Banner.
So
You with me?
it was, yeah. We were at
You actively napping?
I drifted.
Where did I lose you?
Elevator in Switzerland.
So you heard none of it?
I'm sorry. I'm not that kind of doctor. I'm not a therapist. It's not my training.
So?
I don't have the
What, the time?
temperament.
So it's a gag. This probably isn't the greatest gag, but it's fine. But yeah, B for Iron Man 3. We're the Dark World. I think we know my thoughts on this, so let's get this over with.
I wouldn't go in there for 20 minutes.
We already know it's going into the D tier, so it's been my least favorite for a very long time. Whether it gets dethroned as the worst, that remains to be seen. But originally, Patty Jenkins, who directed the 2 Wonder Woman movies for DC, she was supposed to direct, actually, but left the project over disputes over the script, and that pissed off Natalie Portman, who plays Jane Foster, and Natalie Portman basically just like refused to do any reshoots. She was contractually obligated to do this film, so she had to stay on, but she was just so infuriated that she was out of it, and that kind of shows as well. And so much so that the last post-credit scene of the movie, when Thor returns to Earth and kisses Jane Foster, that is actually Hemsworth's wife, in like a wig, and so that was funny. But yeah, the other post credits, I mean, there's basically the big one, which is the Reality Stone gets taken to Benicio del Toro, who plays the Collector, and it sets up Guardians of the Galaxy. And yeah, so that's really cool.
I present to you Tanalir Tivan, the Collector.
You know why we're here.
Of course. But if I may ask, why not keep it secure in your own vault?
The Tesseract is already on Asgard. It is not wise to keep 2 Infinity Stones so close together.
That's very wise. 1 down. 5 to go.
And then the at the end of the second post-credit scene with Hemsworth and his wife posing as Jane Foster, we get the Frost Beast hopping around randomly. Who really cares? But it's just, this is just not a fun movie. I think the Loki stuff is the most fun in the movie. The funeral of Frigga, Thor and Loki's mom, is good, but like Thor and Jane aren't great in this movie. Seems like they're both out of it clearly. And Loki is like the best part of this movie for sure, which is why it doesn't get an F tier. But you know, it's definitely not one I rewatch unless I'm doing a full rewatch here. But yeah, that it's gonna be down here for the whole time. For a very long time, it could be the worst, but we'll have to see. Captain America Winter Soldier now for a much better movie. So the Russo brothers, this is their first MCU movie. They originally actually did comedy sitcoms like Community and Arrested Development before they came into the MCU. Actually, a lot of cameos from their Community series end up showing up in their 4 films. I believe in this one, there's one that is posing as a security guard. And then, yeah, I mean, the Russos did a really great job in this movie. Winter Soldier is great. I think the whole Hydra stuff, infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D., is just a great storyline. Captain America's great. The Bucky stuff is amazing. The action is fantastic. Nick Fury and Black Widow are both great, as well as Falcon. This is just a great film. Chris Evans actually did the elevator fight himself, since the close quarters of that elevator made it nearly impossible to use a stunt double and make them look like Chris Evans in post. So that was actually Chris Evans doing the elevator fight, which is awesome. But yeah, I mean, this definitely gets an easy S tier. Robert Redford is the villain, also great. So, but S tier for sure for Captain America Winter Soldier.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
And the post credits, you have, of course, teasing Age of Ultron. You tease Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver.
This is the age of miracles, Doctor. There's nothing more horrifying than a miracle.
And then you have Bucky finding out who he is in the museum, restoring his memories. So like really cool stuff, and yeah, it's a really great movie. Guardians of the Galaxy. So Guardians of the Galaxy was just like the surprise that nobody saw coming. I love the Guardians movies and these characters, especially Star-Lord. I think Chris Pratt does a really great job, and actually James Gunn originally did not want Chris Pratt for Star-Lord until he saw him audition in a live audition, and that changed his mind. So yeah, I mean that's crazy. Also, apparently Chadwick Boseman auditioned to be Drax the Destroyer, which is a really cool story there. as far as the post credits, you have Baby Groot dancing in the little pot. Not gonna play the music just for copyright sake, but yeah, but obviously the soundtrack in the Guardians movies are incredible, and Guardians 1 has a great soundtrack. Um, and then the other post credit is, of course, Howard the Duck, voiced by Seth Green, who is the son of Dr. Evil in the Austin Powers movies, was in Scooby-Doo, Monsters Unleashed. Seth Green's been in a lot.
What do you let it lick you like that for? Gross.
But yeah, that Howard the Duck will pop up again in little cameos here and there a couple times. But yeah, the Guardians is fantastic. I'm giving this an S tier.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
I love this first movie in particular. Have to see where the rest fall, but I like all of them, so. Avengers Age of Ultron, the second Avengers, and everybody says that it is the worst of the 4 Avengers. I'm not going to disagree there. I think it is. There's just a lot going on in this film. Age of Ultron wore Joss Whedon out so much while he was directing and writing that he never wanted to touch the MCU again, which is fine at this point. Scarlett Johansson apparently was pregnant during filming, so like the motorcycle sequence, they actually had to put someone in like a latex look-alike mask of Scarlett Johansson's face and like use CGI to make it actually look like it was Scarlett Johansson. And so that was cool to learn about that. James Spader as Ultron is great. You also get Scarlet Witch and Vision in this movie. Quicksilver dies, and like, versus Avengers, you had Coulson dying, and like that had an impact because Coulson's been around, in most of the Phase 1 movies, and then you have Quicksilver in this Aaron Taylor Johnson's version at least, and he dies within one movie, and it definitely seems like they were setting up Hawkeye to die. I'm glad we didn't kill Hawkeye, but yeah, it just sucks for that part. The post-credit is Thanos saying, "Fine, I'll do it myself," and grabbing the Infinity Gauntlet.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
Which still would be a little bit more time before we actually get to see Thanos in action. We'd seen him in Guardians of the Galaxy, but and after his post-credit tease in the Avengers, but yeah, it's just further letting us know that Thanos is coming, and but just like so many plot lines going on. I'm not the biggest fan of the Black Widow and Hulk romance at all. And like Ultron could have been I guess more threatening, maybe even for another movie. Like I feel like they could have used him for more if they really wanted to. James Spader did a great job as the voice of Ultron. This is a B tier.
That feels weird, but I'll allow it.
Because it's still fun, but just like there's a lot of flaws, and the setup has aged better because we now know what comes after. At the time, I'm sure people were just very confused about what was going on compared to like what happened in the original Avengers. So, but it's still a fun time, and yeah, it's still good. Then we finish off with Ant-Man. So everybody knows Edgar Wright, who directed such hits as the Cornetto trilogy, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, and The World's End. He was supposed to direct this and write it, and he was announced in the early 2000s, even as early as that, at Comic-Cons and such. But just stuff kept coming up, wasn't able to really settle down and get to doing this till around 2013, and he sent in his script. Him and Joe Cornish, who I believe had worked with him on his Cornetto trilogy, and he got the script back and was horrified and hated the script revisions that were made. So the disputes that he had with Marvel over that ended up making him leave. So they got Peyton Reed instead. And Edgar Wright had also helped cast Paul Rudd for Scott Lang Ant-Man, and Paul Rudd himself helped fix the script with Peyton Reed to make it as good as it at least could be. And this first Ant-Man is really fun. I mean, it's a great time. Most of the cast really gets stuff to do. And, of course, Michael Peña's Luis is fantastic.
But anyway, when Ignacio tells me, yo, I met this crazy fine writer chick at the spot last night, like fine, like crazy stupid fine. And he goes up to the bartender and goes, look at the girl I'm with. You know what I'm saying? She's crazy stupid fine, right? And the bartenders are all like, yeah, crazy stupid fine.
A really great side character. And we'll talk about later Ant-Man entries, of course, too, where wish Luis could have been able to do more later on, but he's great. And the post credits, ultimately it is setting up Evangeline Lilly's Hope Van Dyne to be the Wasp.
Maybe it's time we finished it.
It's about damn time.
Giving her own Wasp suit, which is awesome to see. And then the other one is setting up that since Falcon was in the movie, it's setting up Civil War with Steve Rogers and Sam finding Bucky, and then Sam saying he knows a guy, which is obviously teased at the very end of the film that Ant-Man's going to be doing something with the Avengers. So
we're on our own. Maybe not. I know a guy.
It's exciting. So I'm gonna give Ant-Man a B tier.
That feels weird, but I'll allow it.
It's still a fun film. There's flaws for sure. It's a bit small scale, and like it would have been cool to see Edgar Wright do more on this movie, but for what we got, this first Ant-Man is still a good time. So ultimately where I have everything, so I have Guardians of the Galaxy and Captain America Winter Soldier as the top two. They're both great. And then with the other new entries, Avengers Age of Ultron goes in at number 6, below the first Captain America. And then followed by number 7, Ant-Man, followed by number 8, Iron Man 3, and then in last place is Thor the Dark World, which I don't foresee changing for a long time. So I hope you all have enjoyed Phase 2, and next week, hoping to get to Phase 3, where the culmination of the Infinity Saga happens, and can't wait to talk to you all about that next time on Guide to the MCU on the Tribe of Nerds.